Good afternoon, everyone. Hi there. Just letting a couple people settle down still. So, by way of introduction, I'm Anton Skourides. I'm Alex's son. I'd like to start off by thanking all of you for being with us today. So we are going to start with just some remarks on my father. A number of people will be speaking. I'll start first. Again, thank you for joining us. Um, so my dad was born in Nicosia, Cyprus, in August of 1937. At age 19, he moved to the UK, where he studied and practiced architecture. He also met my mom in the UK, Mary France. I'm sure you all know her very well. And in 1967, they moved to Toronto, where they settled up until their move to Victoria, via a brief detour through Los Angeles. But they basically stayed in Toronto for the next 3 decades, and in partnership with my mom, they launched a very successful real estate business. Developing a number of properties from coast to coast. Until, about 20 years ago in 2001, they moved out to Victoria, where they met most of the people in this room, I'm sure, and a lot of my dad's golfing buddies, which I understand are with us today as well, so thank you for coming. My dad's story is a story of great success. It's a story of hard work, but it's also a story of being a good husband and a good father. Not only as a provider, but someone who led by example through hard work, sacrifice, patience, and a high-minded attitude and spirit. So I'd like to thank my father for everything he's given us, all of us in this room, and just say that we love him and we miss him very much. At this time, my mom, Mary France, has some words to say. So I'm going to invite her up to the microphone. Thank you very much.
Now that's my take on. Now that's my take on Alex. I better take my glasses here. Yes, what I wanted to say is Alex knew what he wanted out of life, and he got what he wanted out of life. Hold on a minute. Yes, Alex was grateful for his life and his 2 wonderful children. His great grandson, Mr. Xavier, there, and his terrific dad. We were very blessed to have our family. Alex was very grateful for that. When I met him in London in the summer of 1966, I was, I think, the epitome of a Parisian. I had never held a gun or a dead rabbit, but somehow Alex managed to convince me to follow him to Canada for a life of hunting and fishing. And from then on, there was never a dull moment in my life. That's my take on Alex.
Thanks, Mom. So at this time, my sister Lydia will be performing, and I'll let her announce the song.
I'm just looking for the speaker. Okay. My dad was a big. Oh, I'm gonna lose my mind now. He was a big fan of opera. I can't do it.
Yes, you
Cyprus. He was just an extra on the stage, and he kept telling me about that. Fortunately, I don't sing Rigoletto very well, but I'm going to sing Turandot. It's an aria called Signore Ascolta. Listen, sir. That's all I'm going to say, because I got to do this before I get too emotional. All right, so Signore Ascolta.
Thanks very much, Lydia. That was lovely. Okay, we are now going to move on to a few more speakers, starting with my dad's Brian Robertson, who's come all the way from Toronto to say a few words. Thanks, Brian.
Hi, everyone. Well, that was a difficult act to follow. You've got to admit that. Anyway, we're here with my wife, Jo. Jo is my wife. She is here. And we actually met Alex and a little bit later Marie-France 50 years ago. So this is the 50th anniversary. I wish it was a little happier, but we're so grateful to be here and to just say a few things about him. Long time, many memories, 50 years of friendship from the two of them. Who was Alex? Well, you've heard a little bit that he was an architect, and he trained actually at Sheffield University in England. And I never quite figured out why a guy from the Mediterranean climate of Cyprus would want to spend 2 freezing winters in Sheffield in Yorkshire, which, believe me, I've been there. I know what that's like. So, but anyway, he did, and as many of you know, he's moved on. You heard a little bit from Anton about what they did, what he did with his career, what he did with Marie-France in the business. So he was entrepreneurial. As you know, he's a developer. He was a builder. And with Mary France in real estate, they were the perfect business couple. He built, she sold very successfully. One example I can give you of one transaction which retains in my memory was they owned quite a big mansion in Rosedale, which is a very Tony, Oak Bay type area in Toronto. And they didn't build it, but Mary France had, as she normally did with the interiors, made it pretty spectacular. Anyway, they put it on the market, and they ended up selling it to a group of Russians.
Any Russians here? Be careful.
I never quite found out what they did with all the rubles. He was an adventurer, a traveler, a risk taker. One great example was he wanted to work in Los Angeles. He had the visa, Mary France didn't have the visa. So Alex solved the problem by not applying for the visa, but smuggling her across the border just a little south of here. What the circumstances of that would have been if it had failed, I cannot imagine. Anyway, here she is. And that's one example of Alex and his entrepreneurship, his risk taker, and amazing what he did with that. One deficit in his character was he never learned to speak French fluently. Now, he'd been married 50-odd years to this lady who's a Parisian, and I could never figure that one out. Most of all, however, he was a good friend. For all those years, warm, generous, loyal. He was, as you all know, a passionate golfer. We played the Thornhill Golf Club in just north of Toronto for quite about 15 years, and I used to come out here frequently and play this lovely course out there at Uplands, and was envious, as we always have been. And above all, he was a great supporter, a great provider, a great partner for 50-odd years to this lady here, Mary France. And great support for the family, Anton, Lydia, back up by Peter, his son-in-law, and of course this incredible young gentleman, Xavier, here, which is the pride of his life. So anyway, as you know, we miss him. I'm so pleased to be here to say a few words. Thank you.
Many thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Brian. It's very nice. Thank you. Next up, I would like to invite David Barry to say a few words. Thank you, David.
Thank you. I'm very privileged to be asked to say a few words. Alex was an intriguing, intelligent, generous, philanthropic. How many adjectives do we need actually to describe him? I did actually. It's because he was so interesting. I thought I once called him sort of intellectual. He went, no, I'm not an intellectual. Intellectuals deal in words. I deal in action, deeds. And he said, and furthermore, I never beat Mary France at Scrabble.
That's true. No one does.
I met him. First time. I mean, sort of around the millennium of 2001 or what. I'd just finished developing a medical centre, Burnside Medical Centre, and he came to as a patient actually for some affair. He had his doctor back in Toronto because he was just travelling out here in the winter months. But he came into the clinic. The trouble was that we had a few teething problems having built this clinic. One of them was that the septic tank was actually underneath the furnace room. And from time to time, when the conditions got right, how would I describe this? Shall we say a feculent smell went through the whole building. Whereupon, of course, the girls working in the lab took off out into the parking lot, and blaming Dr. Barry for their chronic migraines and their domestic turmoil, because clearly the doctor was trying to poison them. And we couldn't work it out. Well, Alex was here when one of these events happened, and so we sort of stopped and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, we've got a bit of a problem." He said, "You certainly do." So he went down to the basement and diagnosed the problem and told me how to fix it. And I said, I could hardly call you a patient. I should call you a friend. He said, "Well, don't let on that our friendship is based on the foundation of shit." Oh, well, as people have said, he was born in Cyprus, and my older sister had married an army officer, and they were posted out to Nicosia, and they used to send postcards back, and it was I used to love reading them and looking at the pictures, because you could sail and swim and then go and ski in the same day, rather like here. But it was very interesting that he should train as an architect, and he had a choice. He could either go to Athens, he said, or to England, and he chose Sheffield, which was intriguing because I was born in Sheffield. My father's.
Sorry about the notes I gave.
I'm not taking it personally yet, but we're an Irish family actually, and it was after the war, and that was where the radiologist went to. But I asked him, why would you go to England to study architecture? Wouldn't you go to Italy or France or Germany? And he said, well, I know England was very interesting sort of architects. I've always admired Lutyens and Inigo Jones and Norman Shaw. And he said also the English laugh at they laugh at themselves. They can take a joke. Whereas, of course, German wit is no laughing matter. When he was in Sheffield, I mean, Sheffield is a very industrial steel town, and he was, being a foreigner and being interested in architecture, this is how he fascinated us. He'd tell us stories about, why was for instance, when he was there, England actually had 2/3 of the population that were homeowners. It's the biggest number in the whole of Europe, and there was a sort of why is that? And he said, and he'd explain why. He'd say that you had to be a homeowner in Victorian England if you wanted to vote. So there was a real keenness to have property, and they all wanted their patch. Englishmen had rights, which they stick down everybody else's throat. But their home is their castle, and he sort of said that the architecture was actually sort of founded on the fact that the weather is miserable. I mean, it's grey and so Englishmen sort of entertain inside, whereas he said in Greece you don't. You entertain outside. So it was a very fascinating sort of point. He then mentioned that there was a street called Anita Street, and there is no Anita Street in the whole of Greater London. I mean, but this was in Sheffield, and he said the reason it's called Anita Street is that it was actually built by the council, and it was in Edwardian times, and they built it with indoor plumbing, which was, but the trouble was they called the street Sanitary Street. Well, the people who lived in Sanitary Street got really a little bit ticked off by sort of being reminded of their ablutions. So they said, we want the S taken off and the Y taken off, and that's why it's Anita Street. So, all right. So anyway, he moved to London. He met Marie-France. They were married in France and came to North America, I think to Los Angeles, and then settled in Toronto, where he was very successful. He designed hospitals, which we talked about, and he also developed things. In fact, I gather he had a street named after him, which was impressive. And
there is a street named after Lydia.
Ah.
There is Lydia Court.
there we are. So, it obviously sort of, the family really got involved in it. Eh? Great.
Anton refused to have a street named after him.
That's not true. He actually couldn't, for some reason,
Or maybe there was one already.
Lydia is a better name.
Well, it's impressive, and it was something when Caroline and I would go down to visit our daughter, who was at York University, and he very kindly invited us over to his house in Thornhill. We played the course. I think it's a tennis club as well. I think Milos Bronic and Shapovalov started there, and we had this lovely sort of situation in the drawing room. I was just saying to Lydia, and somebody sort of said, let's sing. Then I was thinking, oh, yeah, like a bit of a Camorlia. Anyway, Lydia then got up and sang, and I mean, as you heard, I mean, a trained opera voice. I mean, it's just a miracle to listen to it, especially in a drawing room in Thornhills. So I put aside my sort of rendering of Danny Boy for future consideration. Anyway, he finally came out here, and we played golf. He was a wonderfully sort of a wonderful sportsman. He loved tennis and he loved golf, and he followed them on the television, but he never really had favourites. He just liked the sport, and he liked the best man to win, or the best woman to win. And so he had a sort of a real Corinthian casual feel for sporting events, which we admired greatly. And that grit and determination which he lived life with, was very much in evidence when, over this last 6 years, when malignancy had struck, and he battled through that and played golf right through to pretty well the end, which was most impressive. And finally, when he realised that his quality of life was not what he wished to continue with, then he faced up to it, and he had total courage. He had no fear of death, quite unlike sort of Woody Allen, who said, I have no fear of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens. And so we lost him, and great tragedy for the family, and a great sorrow for all his friends. And I hope that his memory will be a blessing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thanks, David. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Okay, now I'd like to invite up Brian Dyer.
Yep. Here is Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Well, I don't know what I've done to follow Lydia and Dr. Barry. I guess like many people here at Uplands, we've been golfing with those who play golf for probably up to about 10 years, but we know that he came here probably up to 20 years ago and was wintering in Victoria. So we've known Alex probably on the golf course for, I suspect, up to 10 years, maybe, Marie-France? Yeah. If anybody had asked me to quickly describe Alex, I would have said Alex is a force of nature. And I thought, well, before I say that, I better check and see what that means. And when I looked in when I Googled it, it said that a force of nature is someone with high energy, someone with influence, somebody with passion, resilience, and charisma. So I think that that would describe our friend Alex pretty well, especially the high energy bit. I often thought it was a shame that I didn't know Alex 30, 40 years ago in his prime, when he would have been busy with his development, his construction, and I understand he tried to play tennis as often as he could, which was probably 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. At least. As well as golf. I should now, what was I going to say here? On the golf course, and that's, of course, where we met Alex and played. Alex was a man, well, he bought a remote control golf cart a couple of years ago. And he is a technical man. He was an architect with an eye for detail. And so this golf cart was heavily scrutinized, and he knew all the specs. He knew the top speed. But one thing that upset him was the turning circle of the golf cart, if you can believe that. Funny enough, Alex never had a rangefinder. Again, for those who do not play golf, that tells you how far you are away from the pin. So what Alex would do in his later days with us, as we approached the green, Alex would say, well, what color is the flag? That tells you far away you are. And we would say a blue, a red, or a white flag. And I never did confess to Alex that I was colorblind. Anyway, Alex was an impressive man. He was our friend. And our sympathies go to other friends, his family, and Marie-France. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Brian. All right. Ron Froelich would like to say a few words.
I think somebody stole your show.
They did.
Thanks, Ron.
These are no good anymore.
Good evening, everybody, and I became friends with Alex. I think Judy Skeen's husband, Bob Skeen, introduced Alex to the Camosun Gyro Club. I guess it was probably about 15 years ago, and Alex joined the club, and a lot of the qualities that Alex had just fit right in to our gyro club. We had a great variety of business people, professional people, and Alex loved the business sessions where we had speakers coming in and topics of controversy discussed, and I had the good fortune to share many great dinners with Alex and solve the problems of the world, and Alex and Marie-France then jumped into gyros, and it was a big part of their social fabric, and we still do that, and going forward we're going to ensure that Marie-France joins with the Camosun Gyro Club to continue these activities. Anyway, a lot of the stuff I was going to chat about has been spoken about, but just to highlight a few things that I felt kind of interesting. First of all of the qualities that you speak about, Alex, I would have to add dogmatic, determined, never wanting to fail at anything, and when he wants to do something, he does it. So he told the story about Marie-France and he meeting in London, but it's a little different. It happened in a British pub, and he saw this beautiful French girl from Paris in the pub, and he said, I want to date that girl. So that happened, and the romance happened, and off they got on their whirlwind romance and moved off to start their new life with a brand new architectural degree in Toronto. But you see a lot of the pictures here about Alex and guns and fishing rods and camping, and Alex loved to do that type of stuff. And at that time in his life, he somehow convinced Marie-France, we're going to go on a cross-Canada camping trip. So they jump in their vehicle and camping gear and fishing rods and guns, and off they went and forged along the way and had a great time till they got to Vancouver. And somebody else spoke of the going down to Los Angeles. Well, it was all arranged for Alex. He had his green card, but guess who didn't? So get to the border, reject. So Alex went down there by himself to start with, and then he said, enough is enough. Got to get my wife. So back to Vancouver, and then he convinces Marie France, we're just going to go, and we'll deal with the paperwork later. This is typical of the zeal this man has for doing things. So he gets Marie France, and he packs up all the stuff in the car, drives to the border. Of course, he can't cross the border. So he goes across the Canadian side, and he finds a ditch. And he said, okay, Marie France, you are going to hide in that ditch, and I'll cover you up with leaves and branches. Then I'm going to zip through the border, come around, and I'll pick you up, and we'll not have any problem with the border patrol. So Marie France, well, what if somebody comes along checking the border? Well, I'm going to hide you with all these branches. They're never going to see you. So she dutifully sits in the ditch, and Alex covers her up and zoops. I don't know how much time it took, but finally, I guess it's becoming dark, and he comes around the U.S. side of the border, and he scurries across, and guess there's Marie France in the ditch, and digs her out, takes her across into the car, and they start their adventure in Los Angeles. Then they no sooner get there, her green card arrives. So back to Vancouver, picks up her green card, and now they're legal. But Alex didn't care about that kind of stuff. He was dogmatic and determined, and he did those type of things. And I think a lot of the things that he had done were exemplified in his interest in our gyro club. And like I say, I hope, Marie France, that you continue with your association with our club. Alex was a good friend, and there's a lot of gyros here that were good friends with Alex too, and we'll certainly miss him. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ron. At this time, I'd like to open the mic to anybody else who'd like to come up and say a few words, if there's anyone here. I don't see anyone. Okay.
I think everything was said.
Yes, and listen, I'm thanks very much. These speeches have really been top quality, and I think it's a measure of how good they are that I feel I learned a lot of things about my dad along the way. So thanks very much. Very touching. We are now going to basically open the buffet to eat. So please join us. And again, from the bottom of my heart, thanks very much, all of you, for attending. Thank you.
don't answer that question.